You are not late because you are weak. You are late because you had to build the foundation other men were handed. And if you misunderstand this, you will spend years hating yourself for losing a race that was never equal. Some men begin life with belief already placed behind them, contacts already waiting, direction already given, money already nearby, confidence already borrowed from fathers, mentors, families, schools, circles, names, and networks. But the unsupported man starts with invisible debt. Not only financial debt, emotional debt, skill debt, network debt, confidence debt. He is not simply trying to succeed. He is trying to become the kind of man who can carry success without collapsing under it. That is why your rise feels delayed. You were not just building a career. You were building the man who could survive one. And here is the question most unsupported men never ask. What if your delay is not proof that you are behind? What if your delay is the cost of becoming owned by no one? Because there is a brutal difference between a man who is supported and a man who must build himself from silence. A supported man can borrow belief before he has evidence. Someone tells him he is capable before the world has tested him. Someone opens a door before he knows how doors are opened. Someone explains the game before he loses years guessing the rules. Someone gives him permission before he even understands that permission is a prison. But the unsupported man receives none of this by default. He must manufacture belief from proof. He must manufacture direction from pain. He must manufacture confidence from repetition. He must manufacture access from visible value. That is why comparison is poison for him. He looks at another man moving faster and thinks, maybe I am defective. But he does not see the invisible capital behind that man. He does not see the father who corrected him early, the uncle who introduced him, the family that funded his risk, the school that gave him language, the circle that made ambition feel normal, the network that vouched before results appeared. So the unsupported man commits the first strategic mistake. He compares his construction phase to another man's inheritance phase. And once he does that, he begins to betray his own timeline. Machiavelli would not comfort him. Machiavelli would not say the world is fair. Machiavelli would say, study the forces, study who has support, study who has fortune, study who has reputation, study who has their own arms, study who depends on borrowed strength. Then stop crying about the structure and start building your own. In The Prince, Machiavelli makes a cold distinction between men raised by fortune and men raised by their own force. Those who by valorous ways become princes acquire a principality with difficulty, but they keep it with ease. This is the law of late success. The man who rises with borrowed support may rise quickly. The man who rises through his own construction rises slowly. But once he has built the foundation himself, he understands the structure from the bottom upward. He does not merely occupy success. He knows how it was made. And that is the difference between being handed a throne and being forged into a ruler. Look at Steve Jobs. In 1985, he was pushed out of Apple, the company he helped create. The weak interpretation is that he lost, that he was rejected, that the kingdom closed its gates and his story was finished. But that is not the Machiavellian interpretation. The colder interpretation is this. Exile forced him to build leverage outside the kingdom that rejected him. He built NXT. He entered the Pixar era. He developed credibility away from the place that thought it could move on without him. Years later, Apple bought NXT, and that acquisition brought him back into Apple. He did not return because people felt sorry for him. He returned because he built something the old power structure needed. Understand that, because this is where unsupported men lose years. They beg the gatekeepers to reconsider them. They explain, they argue. They try to be understood. They keep trying to prove their seriousness to people who have no incentive to see it. But power does not respond to explanation. Power responds to necessity. If no one is behind you, you must build something in front of you so valuable that their doubt becomes irrelevant. That is why late success is often the price of self-ownership. You are not behind because your timeline is slower. You are behind only if nothing is being built underneath the delay. If you are building emotional control, market skill, visible proof, and selective alliances, you are not behind. You are laying the foundation other men inherited. But foundation has one brutal requirement. You cannot need people to believe in you before you move. This is where the unsupported man must grow up. A supported man can borrow belief. The unsupported man must manufacture it. Belief is not a soft feeling. Belief is psychological fuel. When a father says, "You can do this," he lends identity. When a mentor opens a door, he lends access. When a family provides money, they lend time. When a circle introduces you, they lend trust. The unsupported man receives none of this by default. So if he keeps waiting for the emotional conditions of a supported man, he will delay his own life. He will explain his ambition to people who benefit from his doubt. He will argue with family members who only understand safety. He will perform seriousness for friends who secretly prefer him predictable. He will chase validation from people who are not qualified to give direction. And every explanation will drain energy from execution. This is why the first death in an unsupported man's life must be the death of permission, not the death of ambition, the death of waiting to be approved before he acts. Airbnb's early story shows this mechanism clearly. In 2008, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia were running out of money. Their idea had almost no traction. They were going into debt. They were not surrounded by clean certainty and applause. They were not sitting inside a perfect support system with the world already convinced. So they did something strange. They created election-themed cereal boxes. They sold them. They used that strange proof of persistence to survive and get attention. Wired reported that Paul Graham later saw the cereal story as evidence that they just would not die. Most people look at that and see a funny startup story. That is too shallow. The deeper lesson is this. When no one believes the idea, your survival becomes the signal. They did not have clean support. They created proof under pressure. That is power. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He wrote, "Men are attracted more by the present than by the past." People respect what is visible now. Not your hidden pain, not your old dream, not your private conviction, not the version of yourself you keep promising will appear someday. The world is not moved by your internal belief until it becomes external evidence. So stop demanding belief. Start manufacturing proof. Proof is belief made visible. If you are the right man for this channel, stop confusing motion with construction. You already know comfort is not coming, but your problem is not lack of motivation. Your real problem is that your pain has not yet been converted into structure. If you keep waiting to feel supported before you build, you will lose years to people who were never going to give you permission. Inside Patreon, you get deeper, unfiltered breakdowns on power, discipline, solitude, and strategic self-construction, so you can turn abandonment into leverage instead of resentment. This is not for men looking for comfort. It is for men building with no applause and no one coming to save them. The decision is yours. Because motivation is too weak for the unsupported man. He needs something colder. Machiavelli called it virtue, not moral virtue, not being nice, not being agreeable, not hoping that the world will reward your good intentions. Virtue is force under command. It is courage, discipline, timing, adaptability, intelligence, decisiveness, and the ability to shape circumstances instead of being shaped by them. Without virtue, the unsupported man becomes a spectator of his own hardship. He says, "My family did not support me. My friends did not believe in me. Society ignored me. I did not get the same chance." All of that may be true, but truth without strategy becomes resentment, and resentment is useless unless it becomes construction. This is where Machiavelli becomes dangerous to modern ears. He refuses to let a man hide inside fairness. In The Prince, he says, there is nothing more difficult than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Why? Because new things create enemies. When you try to become a different man, your old environment resists. Your family may call it unrealistic. Your friends may call it arrogance. Your workplace may ignore the new skill you are building. Your old habits may try to pull you back into the previous version of yourself. The unsupported man is not only building success, he is introducing a new order into his own life, and every old force will defend the previous regime. That is why his climb feels heavy. He is not just fighting the market, he is fighting inherited doubt. He is fighting emotional disorder. He is fighting the need to explain. He is fighting the old identity that learned to survive by shrinking. Virtue is the ability to impose order on yourself before you demand opportunity from the world. A man with no support cannot afford emotional chaos. He cannot afford weak attention. He cannot afford public complaining. He cannot afford friendships that consume his nights. He cannot afford to be talented but invisible. His life must become organized around proof. Because fortune does not reward the prepared man every day, it waits, it turns, it floods, it exposes. And when fortune finally moves, the man who prepared in silence looks sudden to everyone who never watched the construction. But he knows the truth. Nothing was sudden. The foundation was hidden. Fortune does not hate you. Fortune exposes whether you built anything strong enough to survive change. That is why many unsupported men misread their own silence. They think nothing is happening because no one is clapping. They think they are failing because no one is announcing their progress. They think the world has rejected them because the market has not yet turned toward what they are building. But silence is not always failure. Sometimes silence is storage. Stored skill, stored discipline, stored judgment, stored proof, stored pain converted into capacity. Machiavelli wrote, "Fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions." But he did not say fortune controls everything. His point was colder. If fortune controls one half, then the other half must be built. The foolish man waits for the river to flood and then complains that he was destroyed. The strategic man builds barriers while the river is calm. That is the difference. One man calls chaos bad luck. Another man calls chaos the moment his preparation becomes visible. Look at Jensen Huang and NVIDIA. NVIDIA began in 1993 with an uncertain mission. Jensen Huang later described the early idea as a company with no chance of success. The company made failed technical choices. Sega did not use its chip for Dreamcast. The company was close to collapse. But a contractual payment helped NVIDIA survive long enough to build the Riva 128, and that chip helped secure the company's future. The shallow interpretation is luck. The deeper interpretation is survival through enough cycles until the world finally needed what had been built. That matters because many unsupported men quit one cycle too early. They quit when the market is quiet. They quit when their family does not understand. They quit when their friends laugh. They quit when nobody responds. They quit when the proof is still invisible. And then, years later, they watch another man win with the same skill they abandoned. Not because he was better, because he survived long enough for fortune to meet preparation. This is why late success is not always delay. Sometimes it is stored force. Years of learning, years of failed attempts, years of emotional control, years of invisible repetition, years of public proof, years of becoming the kind of man who can enter the door when it finally opens. But preparation has one brutal requirement. The world must be able to see it. Private excellence does not create public power. Visible proof does. This is where quiet, competent men lose. They believe substance automatically announces itself. It does not. The world meets your signal before it verifies your depth. You may work harder than the loud man. You may be more serious than the connected man. You may be more disciplined than the man with better positioning. But if your value stays hidden, the world will keep rewarding the man whose proof is easier to read. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." And then he goes colder. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are. This is not permission to become fake, it is a warning. Unseen reality is politically weak. A skill without a portfolio is hidden value. A result without documentation is vulnerable value. A transformation without evidence is private emotion. A reputation without repeated signals is unstable. The unsupported man must become impossible to misread. Build the portfolio. Document the result. Publish the case study. Show the numbers. Demonstrate the skill. Package your value so clearly that doubt becomes expensive. This is not vanity. This is strategic communication. If no one will vouch for you, your work must testify. And once your proof becomes visible, people will appear. That creates the next danger. When you have no proof, people ignore you. When you build proof, people return. Do not confuse their return with loyalty. Most people do not judge potential. They judge advantage. The family that doubted you may suddenly say, "They always knew." The friends who mocked you may suddenly want access. The strangers who ignored you may suddenly call you inspiring. If the unsupported man is emotionally hungry, late attention can seduce him. He will mistake applause for alliance. He will give ownership to people who only arrived after the risk disappeared. Machiavelli understood this. A ruler's intelligence is judged by the men around him. Your circle is not decoration. It is a public report on your judgment. So do not build alliances from loneliness. Build alliances from demonstrated capacity. Look for people who respect discipline before reward. Look for people who bring competence, not noise. Look for people who can operate under pressure. Look for people who tell you the truth before it benefits them. The unsupported man does not need everyone behind him. He needs a few capable people beside him. There is a difference. Crowds consume attention. Alliances multiply force. Crowds arrive when proof is visible. Alliances help build what later becomes visible. But no alliance can save a man who cannot command himself. Before market skill, before reputation, before money, before status, the unsupported man must build the first foundation of power. Emotional control. A man with no support cannot afford emotional chaos. Every reaction costs him power. If he remains reactive, he will waste years fighting shadows. He will argue with doubters. He will explain himself to the unqualified. He will chase validation from people who cannot give direction. He will confuse being misunderstood with being stopped. Machiavelli's line about fear and love is often abused. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." This does not mean becoming cruel. It means understanding control. Love depends on another person's feeling. In Machiavelli's political framework, fear depends on predictable consequences. Applied carefully to your life, the lesson is simple. Do not build your identity on being liked. Do not build your ambition on being understood. Do not build your discipline on being encouraged. Do not build your standards on whether others approve. The unsupported man must become governed by principles, not reactions. Emotional control is the ability to remain strategic when the environment refuses to validate you. This is where late success begins, not in applause, not in status, not in money. It begins when a man stops needing the room to approve his direction. He becomes less available to manipulation, less addicted to explanation, less afraid of silence, more capable of long construction. You are not abandoned, you are unowned. And if no one owns your rise, no one gets to claim authority over your direction. But unowned does not mean powerful. A free man without skill is still easy to ignore. This is the next foundation, market skill. Your pain does not make you valuable, your skill does. The market does not pay for what you survived, it pays for what you can solve. No one pays you because you were doubted. No one promotes you because you were lonely. No one respects your ambition because it hurt. The market is not your therapist. The market is a battlefield of value. Machiavelli warned against depending on borrowed forces. In politics, he meant armies. In your life, your own forces are capacities you control. Skill, attention, judgment, reputation, proof, cash flow, distribution, emotional discipline. If someone can destroy your confidence with one insult, you do not own it. If someone can destroy your income with one decision, you do not own your power. If someone can erase your credibility because you never documented your work, you do not own your reputation. Market skill is the unsupported man's first independent army. Learn sales. Learn writing. Learn editing. Learn coding. Learn ethical persuasion. Learn negotiation. Learn operations. Learn how money moves. Learn how attention moves. Learn how attention moves. Learn how trust is built. Do not romanticize struggle. Convert struggle into competence. Stop asking, why do they not believe in me? Ask, what proof have I made impossible to dismiss? That question removes emotion from the equation. It turns pain into production. It turns doubt into data. It turns invisibility into a design problem. If you are the right man, stop mistaking suffering for progress. You already know the world respects proof, but your real problem is that you keep carrying pain without converting it into visible power. If you keep hiding your value and waiting for people to discover you, you will watch louder, weaker, better positioned men take the opportunities you are capable of earning. Inside Patreon, you get deeper, unfiltered lessons on proof, power, emotional control, and self-ownership, so you can build a life that no longer depends on applause. This is not for spectators. It is for builders who are done asking to be understood. The decision is yours. And now, the final trap. Comparison. Do not compare your construction phase to another man's inheritance phase. That is how unsupported men betray their own timeline. You see his result. You do not see what was given. You see his confidence. You do not see who installed it. You see his network. You do not see who introduced him. You see his speed. You do not see the foundation beneath him. Comparison makes a man rush. Copy, overspend, announce too early. Take advice from men playing a different game. Become ashamed of the slow, boring, necessary work. And then he loses the only advantage unsupported men have: self-built depth. So stop asking, why am I behind? That question weakens you. Ask, what foundation am I missing? That question gives you power. If you lack emotional control, your first foundation is silence, routine, and reaction discipline. If you lack market skill, your first foundation is focused, learning tied to economic value. If you lack visible proof, your first foundation is documentation and public evidence. If you lack alliances, your first foundation is becoming useful to capable men. If you lack confidence, your first foundation is repeated proof kept as a private record. If you lack money, your first foundation is skill, savings, and leverage, not fantasies of rescue. If you lack direction, your first foundation is removing distractions until the signal becomes visible. The unsupported man wins by diagnosis, not complaint. Machiavelli's worldview is not comforting, it is clarifying. He teaches that power is unstable when borrowed, that appearance shapes judgment, that fortune favors the prepared only when they build before the flood, that men judge outcomes more than intentions, that love, approval, and support are weaker foundations than self-command, proof, and force. He does not tell you the world is fair. He tells you to stop needing it to be fair. So kill the old belief. I am behind because no one supported me. Replace it with this. I am building the foundation other men were handed. Kill the old belief. I need them to believe in me before I move. Replace it with this. I will build proof until belief becomes irrelevant. Kill the old belief. My delay means I am failing. Replace it with this. My delay is only failure if I am not using it to build emotional control, market skill, visible proof, and selective alliances. Kill the old belief. I have no one behind me. Replace it with this. Good. Then no one owns what I become. The unsupported man may rise late, but if he builds correctly, he rises owned by no one. A man who is handed everything may rise early, but he may never learn what holds the structure together. A man who builds alone learns every beam, every crack, every pressure point. He knows what it cost, he knows what it took, he knows how to rebuild if fortune strikes again. That is not lateness, that is foundation. If this gave you a clearer way to see your own timeline, subscribe to Depths of Psyche. This channel is for men building with no support, no network, and no one coming to save them. Not motivation, not comfort. Exposure and execution. Study Machiavelli carefully, not as a villain, not as a hero, as a realist. Because once you understand how power actually works, you stop begging reality to become kinder. You become harder to remove, harder to deceive, harder to ignore, and eventually harder to deny. No support, no network, no excuses. Build anyway.